Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Anim Aweh. I'm a licensed mental health therapist, clinical health educator, certified Scrum Master. I'm a lot of things, but most importantly, I'm proud to be a social worker, and that's what I'm actually going to be talking about today. So, a lot of times I often get asked, do you regret becoming a social worker? And people are often surprised by my response, and I tend to always say no. The reason why I always say no is because as a licensed clinical social worker with over 10 years of experience, both clinical, medical, macro, micro, you name it, I've pretty much gotten the experience. I've learned to sort of navigate and create the career of my dreams. And so I want to talk about that today. And this video is very important, especially for those of you who may be looking at social work as a career path. Maybe you are in social work right now and you're frustrated with your career and you just you want to give up, you want to go apply to different programs or go back to school. And so I just want to talk about the 5 things that I wish I had known before becoming a social worker, getting into this career path that I think probably would have helped me sooner rather than later, although I'm in a more comfortable space and I'm really grateful. I do reflect upon these things and I want to share those with you, and let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure that you are subscribed to my channel again, and if you know somebody that can benefit from this information, I always say this, make sure you share this with them. There are definitely people who are out there that are on the fence, so I know I'm not talking to anyone, I'm not talking to, just the wall out there. So again, share. That I wish I had known is that I did not need to accumulate so much debt to get and complete my MSW degree. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of schools out there. There are state schools, there are private schools, there are online schools. And granted, everybody needs different things when it comes to school, right? Some people need that online program. Some people need to be in state because of that tuition. And my biggest regret really on this journey of social work has to be hands down was getting into debt for my degree. What I've later learned is that there were plenty of opportunities to get my graduate degree paid for. And so that was something that I've learned that I wish somebody had told me early on. And so one of the ways you can kind of navigate that is assistantships, right? Assistantships are literally just you as a graduate student working at the university, whether that means you being a TA, whether that means you, working at the library or working in your department, social work department, doing different tasks. It really is a great opportunity to get your schooling paid for. Now, they cover pretty much everything except room and board, generally speaking. Depends on the university, of course. Check it with your universities. But if you've taken nothing from this video, make sure you remember assistantship, especially if you don't already have your MSW and you are going towards seeking your MSW. And the other thing is really, really look at the cost. I say this all the time, getting into debt for MSW is not worth it. It does, and this may shock some people, but it is not worth it. Does that mean you can't make a great living and make a lot of money and great impact and, foster a lot of change in your communities and in the world on a global scale? No, that doesn't mean that, but it is not worth getting into the amount of debt that I see some people walking away with, right? I got really lucky. I walked away with around 35K because I went to an in-state small school. Now, I'm from Boston. There are plenty of amazing universities. And so one of those universities that I was looking at the time was Simmons. But when you look at the price tag of Simmons versus my small school, Salem State, and, in my opinion, are creating comparable social workers that are going out there into the field and working within the same agencies. And I'll never forget graduation night. My friends and I, we all had finished our MSW programs. We all went to various schools in the greater Boston area, and we went out to some place in Boston. And one girl, she had graduated from Simmons, and she came up to me. She was like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna do better than you because I went to Simmons and you went to a state school." That has stuck with me forever. Is that my motivating factor? Not necessarily. But the reason why that stuck to me is because there is no agency that I haven't worked for. There is no top hospital that I haven't worked for. There's no top government agency that I wanted to work for that I haven't worked for. So everything has always worked out. And so it really doesn't matter the name of the school. The most important thing is to make sure that it's accredited and the price tag matches what you're looking for. And if you aren't if you're worried about the financial piece, making sure that you apply to graduate assistantships. Apply. You should not be paying for a graduate degree. If again, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Do not pay for a graduate degree. There's too much money out there for you to be going 200, 300, $400,000 in debt for a social work degree. That is the most ridiculous thing ever. But I'll get off that stool there and kind of move forward. But again, payments, price tags. Look at the price tags of these schools. Get an assistantship, get it paid for. And if you happen to be watching this, you already went through your MSW program, you accumulated a whole bunch of debt. Don't fear. There are options out there, especially if you are a licensed clinical social worker. And I'll talk about that a little later. Number 2 is that the license is not necessarily the end all be all of your social work career. Now, granted, if you want to focus strictly on only being a mental health therapist, then you absolutely need to be licensed at the clinical level. No doubt about it. But because we are social workers and because, in essence, of the career, there's just so many options. And there really is like the fundamentals of social work, right? When we think of like empowerment, organizing, understanding the different sort of systems that people are in interaction with, the different layers and how that impacts people, human behavior, human connection. And so all of those skill sets are really valuable and can be translated into other work, right? And so when we look at micro versus macro, one of the things I always say is that I dabble between both of them, right? When I'm doing consulting, when I'm doing public speaking, when I'm working as a project manager, a program manager, a scrum master, like I'm using my macro skill sets. And oftentimes I always say that my clinical, right, my macro informs my macro work. And so what I mean by that is essentially because when I'm going into an organization, I'm assessing, right? In the same way that I would assess a client when I'm working with them independently or one-to-one in a therapeutic setting, right? I'm assessing, we're creating treatment goals. And in the same way I'm creating goals, or you sort of identifying the KPIs for the project, right? So there are a lot of interchangeable skills that we have as social workers. And that's why I really want social workers to understand that you don't, if you're not truly passionate and like you're not burning up inside about one-to-one therapy clinical work, that's okay, right? Your career is not going to end right there. There are other options. And so it's really a matter of understanding your skill set, understanding the skill set that you've gotten from that MSW program, and how do you apply it elsewhere. So licensure is not the end all be all. While I am a licensed clinical social worker and it has certainly made, I won't say that it's made my career easier, but now I'm at a point in my career where I see the benefit. I see how like I have options. I see how my clinical voice is requested, right? I see how I can create further impact from a clinical standpoint, but also, working on a macro setting as well, on a macro level rather, I'm also able to inform change and support, not only just change on an individual level, but on a systemic level. And so the skills are inherently valuable. How will you market them, right? So one of the things that, when we first get into grad school, I don't know if this has been your experience, you can let me know in the comments, like, yeah, I experienced that too, is that, these professors tend to tell us that, we can only go one direction with this MSW. And that's not true. I think a lot of it is projection, right? A lot of folks who unfortunately may not necessarily be, happy with themselves or happy with their own career decisions. And so it's really important to be mindful of like people who are trying to project their own stuff on you. And you can't let anyone speak to your destiny, right? That's between you, your God, or your source, or whomever you believe in. That's between you two, who decides where and how far you go. And so it's really important to understand that if you are sitting here watching this and you do not desire to be a licensed independent clinical social worker, that's okay. There are other options. You just simply have to ask yourself, or start to develop a roadmap about what you see for yourself or what you want from yourself. And one of the things I always say is like work backwards, right? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, right? Okay, I see myself being XYZ. Okay, so we're gonna start there, right? So what are the steps I need to get there? And so again, just re-emphasizing that being independently licensed as a clinical social worker isn't the end all be all, especially if you are not into therapy, and you just want variety in your career. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. I wish, like, when I was in grad school, they sort of acknowledged that and normalized that it's okay to not want necessarily to be only a licensed independent clinical social worker. Speaking of people projecting and trying to displace their fear upon you, is that this idea, this notion that you can't make money in social work is an absolute lie, right? Well, that was literally the first thing they told me in grad school. Like, my professor was just like, if you came here to make money, you're in the wrong career. And so I accepted that for a truth for a very long time. Like, I was doomed. I was going into my internship very doomed. But fortunately, I had met a professor in my program, and she was actually not a licensed clinical social worker. This black woman, actually, she was a Dominican woman. Shout outs to her. She was a badass. Like, she was a program manager. She was developing and strategizing with all these different health organizations in the city of Boston. And if you're from Boston, or you know anything about Boston, we have the best of the best healthcare systems. And so she was on that level. And I would talk to her every day after class, and she's just like, oh yeah, like, this, I work on this, I've done this, you've probably seen that, I was a part of that initiative. Oh, and she was just so forthcoming about the endless possibilities and opportunities that she had as a social worker. And like, she always reemphasized, like, I'm doing amazing financially. And so that was really helpful for me as a young budding social worker to see that, especially when the rest of the messages from other professors were that you weren't going to make money. And so this idea that you can't make money in social work is a lie. And I want to let's just clear that up here right now, that that is a lie. There are absolutely so many opportunities to make money as a social worker, especially, again, if you're a licensed clinical social worker. The opportunities are totally endless. Like, I was just telling somebody, like, there's a contract out right now that's $150 an hour, right? That's comparable to what some nurses are making. And I hate to call nurses into this space, but I know a lot of social workers compare themselves to nurses, especially if you're in that medical setting. But the opportunities are there, right? Are you in a position to get them, right? Do you have the experience? Do you have the clinical license, unfortunately? And even if you're not a clinically licensed, right, and you're on that macro path, or have you leveraged your skill sets from your MSW program, right? Do you have experience operating or running programs? Do you have that under your belt? Can you articulate that in an interview, right? Are you confident in what your ask is, right? If a company reaches out to you right now and they say, hey, we want to work with you, we know that you're an amazing program manager, we know that you're an amazing DEI consultant, we know that you're amazing, whatever it is, right? Are you comfortable to ask for what your value is, right? Do you understand what that is for yourself? And so these are the type of things that you have to be thinking of, because the money is out there, the opportunities are out there, and they're endless. Because as far as I'm concerned, or not even just me, right? Like, literally, Medicare standards, Medicaid standards, most insurance plans, like, a social worker has to be involved and integrated in most people's care. So it's there, it's literally written in. So, like, the opportunities are there. Are you prepared to get them? Is a better question. So do not listen. And if you do have already gotten that message, again, I'm here today to tell you that is a lie. What is this, 3 or 4? Can't even remember. But I think, in full transparency, sometimes we're going through our MSW programs, and, we're geared up to change the world, and we're going to graduate, and we're going to tackle all these problems. And so the reality is, you might not be changing all the world's problems. And you know what, that's okay. Sometimes we influence change on a one-to-one level. We influence change maybe with a small group of people, but oftentimes I think we can be disappointed or let down when you get out there and you realize that, oh, well, that lobby day that I had to do during graduate school, that was pretty cool. But in the real world, I'm now seeing that lobbying is really just a rich man's sport, and whoever can pay the most money gets to win the politician over and gets the policy passed. And so it can be really frustrating. And I just want to highlight that and note that, and, wish somebody had told me, or I wish I understood how complex the world truly is, right? I think we hit on it on a surface level. And so I'm seeing that now in real time with this Palestine and Israel situation or conflict right now. Genocide, rather. Let me be transparent. This is my YouTube, and we're going to call it a genocide. But what I'm realizing is that, or how I'm feeling, rather, is like I feel really powerless, right? Regardless of the protesting, regardless of the, I've called the White House hell. I've written the White House. I've written my local senators and representatives and like demanded a ceasefire. And so feeling really powerless in that regards, but I know at the same light, like, the reason why I feel confident to even do those type of things or even know that I can, those are proper steps that I can take, reaching out to my elected officials was because of my MSW program. But, I just want to reemphasize that sometimes change is it's small but not to be not acknowledged. And so to continue getting to this place where we can accept those small little wins or little changes in our process, and that is just as impactful as sort of like a big win. So just helping you to sort of grasp that and take that in, because oftentimes, like I said, we get out of our programs, we're going to change the world, and sometimes changing the world can look like simply supporting that one person at that time get to their doctor's appointment, right? Get to their dialysis appointment. They now have transportation to make sure that they're getting this life-saving treatment. So that sometimes that's how we're going to impact change at that level. And finally, let's talk about this sort of journey and kind of I want to center this one to those who are seeking clinical licensure. The journey is not easy. It is not easy at all. I think it's important that we be transparent about the process. It is not easy, and I don't think it's actually designed to be easy. And I think the powers that be continue to sort of wanting to gatekeep it, right? So that exam, I got licensed first in California, so 3,200 hours, 120 hours of supervision. Like, the process is not easy. And so it's really important to get with organizations that can sort of meet you where you are and provide you what you need. So whether that means that they pay for supervision versus you paying out of pocket, whether that means they provide additional training and support for you to continue growing and learning, that's going to be really important. But I just want to reemphasize, like, this process is not easy. It definitely can be really, it can be hell, like, if I'm being transparent with you, right? Like, I know for myself, I had to take the exam 3 times. I failed 2 times and finally passed on my third time. So it definitely is not an easy process. And I say all this to say that while we acknowledge that and call that into this space, that I certainly hope that if it's something that you're passionate about, that we can get through that, regardless of what the legislation that is potentially coming around the exam, around the process. Like, let's try to support one another the best way that we can. And so sometimes, again, one of the things I do is I provide supervision for folks at a low and discounted rate so that I can support them and get into their dreams, because I know how hard it can be. And also, being a field liaison, you got people that are working, or excuse me, not working at all, in school full time, have to be in internship 20 hours a week. So I get that. I've been through that. So, like, I always tell my supervisors, like, let me know how I can support you, right? If you got to take a day off, it's okay. It's okay. Like, I'm not going to be imposing any sort of sanctions or any type of recommendations against a person for having to take a day off to take care of themselves. So, like, it's just really important to make sure that you get with fellow social workers that understand you, understand your path, and not that they're going to give you a free pass, but like, you get with somebody that understands and sees the value in you and wants to support you on this journey. So those are sort of my points in things I wish I knew, because I think sometimes the schools do us a disservice in that they don't keep it truly honest with us, and they tell us sort of these biased things that I think doesn't always necessarily have to be true. And so hopefully you have found this helpful. And again, make sure you share this with somebody that is a social worker or looking to become a social worker and wants the truth about social work. So that they can make a more informed decision. All right. And if again, make sure you subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. Let me know below where you are on your social work journey. If you stuck to this point, let me know below where are you in your social work journey, and if you're enjoying it. Hope